Good afternoon, Kansas.
Good afternoon.
You may be seated.
Good afternoon, Kansas. My name is Colin Gruber. I'm the state coordinator in Indiana, and these are your Unit 1 judges.
My name is Barry Anderson. I'm an Associate Justice in the Minnesota Supreme Court. Held that position for 14 years. Prior to my time as a judge, I actually had the opportunity to serve as an assistant coach, so I'm familiar with both sides of the event that we have underway today. And I'm very much looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Good afternoon, my name is Alex Roski. I'm a We the People alum. So believe it or not, your We the People career does not end this weekend. You can just come to this side of the table down the road. I am now an attorney. I do complex commercial litigation based out of Indianapolis. Happy to be here.
My name is Darcy Kern. I am a professor of history in Connecticut, and I have a question. Jayhawks or Wildcats?
We created a riot.
No civil war is inside the room.
I did my undergraduate at Kansas State, so.
You'd be so kind as to introduce yourselves and your coaches and faculty members.
My name is Zach Wiedemann. I'll be attending Kansas State next year.
My name is Ben Woodgren. I'll be attending Brigham Young University.
I'm Christina Bernal. I'll be attending Pittsburgh State University.
I'm Sawyer Halverson. I'll be attending Brigham Young University.
Kyle Feather, attending University of North Texas. And we are under the direction of Mr. Thomas and Mr. Christensen from Blue Valley Northwest.
All right, so we have the question of the day. It's Unit 1. What are the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system? And the question that we've been asked to have a conversation with you today about is question 1. What are classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy, and how did they influence the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights? Which, if either of these two sometimes competing philosophies has prevailed in the United States since the founding period, explain your position and give evidence to support it. What contemporary conditions of American society and governance, if any, can be attributed to the tension between classical republicanism and natural rights philosophy? Explain your position and give evidence to support it. Timer, are you ready?
Ready.
The panel's ready. We look forward to our conversation. You may begin.
Natural rights philosophy and classical republicanism form the foundation for the United States' most influential documents. However, natural rights has prevailed in issues that pit the philosophies against each other. Whether in current events such as same-sex marriage or abortion, or in founding documents, the principles of natural rights reign supreme.
The Declaration of Independence was the first proclamation of colonial independence. It was also the primary response to King George III after he violated the social contract through a long chain of abuses against colonial ideas of justice and representation. The founders believed that all colonists deserve the right to alter or to abolish colonial rule under Britain and to institute new government if necessary. Thomas Jefferson stated in the Declaration that the unremitting injuries and usurpations committed by the king establish an absolute tyranny over the states.
The social contract is an implicit agreement between a government and its people, promising obedience in exchange for protection. King George III had repeatedly violated this contract, resulting in the colonist revolt. Jefferson stated that the king refused his assent of laws, placing himself above the rule of law. The underlying motivation for revolution came from the king denying the people of certain inalienable rights endowed by their creator. In this way, the Declaration stands as a testament to the founders' belief of natural rights philosophy.
In contrast, the Constitution represents many ideals of classical republicanism. It structures the government so that representatives preside over small, uniform communities that feed into the larger nation. Furthermore, the Constitution granted more power to the central government than its predecessor, the Articles of Confederation. Section 8 enumerates financial, military, and legislative powers that Congress holds, including the power to lay and collect taxes, the power to regulate commerce, and the power to call forth a militia. The founders' idea to strengthen the central government was influenced by classical Republican ideals. The strongest tribute to the philosophy comes from the purpose of government, which in classical republicanism is to promote the common good. This idea is prevalent in the preamble, which lists promoting the general welfare as an integral goal in the new government. Classical republicanism ideals influence the Constitution so heavily that many anti-federalists fear that their rights may be oppressed by the government. The Federalists compromised with the Bill of Rights, a document geared toward ensuring the natural rights of the people by limiting government.
Between natural rights philosophy and classical republicanism, the ideals of natural and unalienable rights are much more relevant in society. This is evident in current events today, such as same-sex marriage and the idea of abortion. Both issues have sides that draw inspiration directly from Locke. For example, one side argues for same-sex marriage because they believe that individual rights should reign supreme over government influence. The same argument can be made for abortion. Whether in Roe versus Wade 45 years ago, or recently in legislation to legalize gay marriage, natural rights philosophy is alive as it has ever been and is ever present in politics and issues today.
Much of the tension between the two philosophies originates from a lack of compromise on current issues. Thanks to the rise and commonplace of political parties and elections, most citizens push one direction on issues and often against each other. Those parties unite people with one another to have one more weight on specific issues, but unfortunately give up some diversity in an effort to gain more power and influence. This leads to gridlock and misrepresentation because people feel obligated to joining a party to feel politically influential, even if that means supporting some causes they disagree with. At the same time, special interests have influences on the government. These groups invest money into now multi-million-dollar industries based on government policies and politics, which makes changes in certain areas more difficult.
Including issues such as same-sex marriage and abortion take significantly longer to reach resolution in the United States because they both conflict between ideas of classical republicanism and naturalized philosophy.
We are now open for questions.
So you talked about the concept in your paper of small, uniform communities. And I think the average member of the House of Representatives represents hundreds of thousands of people. Would classical Republicans think that the size of our country is sustainable?
I think they would. I think it's not about maybe the actual number of people in each division, but rather how it's proportioned across the country. We have 435 representatives in the House right now. Imagine if each one of them only represented 100 people. We wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't be feasible to have that many representatives walking around the building. They wouldn't get anything done. And so what they represent right now is proportioned to our populace.
Let me ask a better question. Would a classical Republican think that it's time for the United States to break up into smaller countries?
James Madison, when addressing the threat of factions in Federalist 10, he noted that a large community such as the United States, with so many different ideas and diverse groups conflicting, that no faction would actually be able to rise up and take power. So he, as a classical Republican, would actually argue that our size is beneficial.
Well, you guys went to some of the most controversial topics straight away. Abortion and same-sex marriage. Starting with abortion, or just focusing on abortion, I'm curious what you would think that natural rights philosophers would argue on the abortion question, and then what classical Republican philosophers might argue on the abortion question, and how that might fit with our politics and our debate.
I would argue that natural rights philosophers would believe for abortion that women should have the right to do what they want to their body as they choose to be, because their body belongs to them, and thus as an individual they have a right to make that decision.
Alternatively, there is another view, which is that the right of the potential child or fetus cannot be infringed upon. So both of those are supported by natural rights philosophies.
And then on the classical Republican side, it's promoting the common good of society and kind of like promoting the family unit, and like that's a baby that's going to be a part of society, and prohibiting that goes against that ideal.
How would Locke and Jefferson in particular, and the founders in general, see the intersection of religion and natural rights?
Sorry, could you restate the question?
So how would Locke and Jefferson in general, and the founders in specific, see religion intersecting with natural rights? What did they view the role of religion as in dealing with natural rights philosophy?
Well, I think they definitely viewed it as a group or organization that is very much orchestrated and connected to the idea of classical republicanism, the idea of civic virtue, of giving to the communities. And I mean, of course, talking about the issues that we just discussed earlier, there's kind of clash between that and those groups. But I don't necessarily think they viewed those entities as connected to the natural rights philosophy as much, nearly so as classical republicanism.
I would disagree. I believe that they would believe that religion is a form of expression and a way to fulfill your beliefs and exercise what you believe in. So natural rights would say that you have the right to do that.
What obligations, if any, do American citizens owe to their country or community?
For one, taxes. In order to join a government and be a part of society, you have to give up some of your income. And that just goes along with the social contract theory. In order to be a part of society, people have to give up some of their rights in order to be protected by the government.
But as a result of that, the government has an obligation to protect its citizens, and if they overstep their bounds and commit acts that's against the idea of protection, then the citizens have a right to revolt.
I'm curious, since you brought up taxes, since taxes are actually a form of property, and property is one of the natural rights according to law, then if they are an obligation under classical Republican theory, at what point is too much, right? Where does the clash between natural rights and natural right to property and classical Republican tax obligations lie?
Well, I think that comes down to your interpretation of natural rights philosophy and classical republicanism and where those divide. I don't think our group can give you a direct answer as to where that would be, but I think we can say that both of those are very critical, and having a balance is very necessary.
I can give an answer.
Okay.
We're ready.
Again, it goes all back to the form of protection. So taxes are, of course, necessary in order for a government to function, because a government cannot function if it doesn't have any money. However, it's the act when taxes are unreasonable to the point where it's not for the sake of protection. Clearly, it's for the benefit of the politician who's collecting the taxes. So it's just a matter of balance. The necessary amount, but not farther than that.
As my colleague said, going back to the social contract theory, if the citizens believe that the government is overstepping their bounds, they have a right to revolt. It's all about the consent of the people in government.
And one way they can do that is not necessarily revolting to overthrow anybody illegally, but in a way where they can vote in representatives that maybe do not support taxes and can lower taxes for them.
All right, very good. Alex?
My next question was, should we let Texas secede from the Union? we unfortunately ran out of time. You guys have a large team and you shared the stage well, right? You're working as a unit, and I really appreciated that. You seem to know each other's strengths, and I just felt like we were having a conversation with a panel, and I really appreciated that. I threw you a curveball question off the bat, just to see how you'd respond. I thought you guys did well with that, going to Madison factions. You know, there's as you continue to think about these questions, there's a theorist, Chibu, I think his first name is Charles, right? And his whole idea is, look, you can vote with your feet, right? And while we may be a big country, if certain states or certain cities offer a different package of taxes or benefits and natural rights that you like, move there, right? And we can have more like-minded communities if we do move with our feet. So I don't know, I thought that was an interesting issue to talk about. You guys are clearly thinking on your feet, and I really appreciate you going back to, fundamentals in the unit, thinking about, all right, and then building on that for the response to questions. So nice job.
I would like to echo what Alex said. I thought you guys did a great job. You worked well together. You would pick up the slack when one of you couldn't, give a solid answer. The others of you would come in and do so. You had really specific examples. You took on some tough issues, and I thought you gave good reasons why, for example, abortion may be seen as a right to the child's life, a right to the mother's body. You mentioned, I thought it was really good how you mentioned the importance of the family to civic republicanism. That was really good. And then, Christine, you brought up the social contract on the tax issue and representation. That was also very good. So good job.
Yeah, I agree with that. And two observations about handling sensitive and difficult issues. One is that you did it in a way that is neutral and fair to the arguments on both sides. That's much harder to do than people realize, and you did it well. The second point that I would make is that you picked up on the fact that these issues don't break down into neat categories. There is on the abortion question, there is a natural rights component to it, the life of the infant, the life of the mother. There's also, a communitarian interest in the sense that government sees itself as protecting the rights of those who can't protect themselves. Very much not an individual right, not a libertarian kind of approach. You see that in that question, and frankly, one issue you didn't mention, there's no reason why you should have, but has been in the news in the legal business, is assisted suicide. You're going to see, that's a topic that you're going to see much discussion about in years to come, and you'll be able to apply what you did here to that topic. Christina, your response on the taxes piece was dead spot on. Frequently, we look to our government responses, our obligations as citizens, when we talk about voting. I have a long speech I'd give about how we emphasize that too much. I will save it for another day. But one of the other things you can talk about are taxes, because you do have an obligation as a citizen to pay taxes. And then you have the question of how do you balance that against everything else. So I thought it was a very strong presentation. On the religion question, I would just say that Jefferson and Locke saw religion as critical to a natural rights understanding. Others disagree with them on that. It's a question that divided the country then, divides us now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have a colleague that I'm circuit now who will say it's
Thank you very much.